Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Tiles Most Wanted, Case of the Southwest Tile Killers, Episode 1, Series 1. I'm Jim Olson, Assistant Executive Director with the National Tile Contractors Association, and I want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today's webinar sponsored by Custom Building Products. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to remind you that during the webinar, you will be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in your questions, and we will answer those questions at the end of this presentation. If the audio on your computer is poor, call the number on the invite to the webinar and listen on your phone. All NTCA webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel shortly after the webinars are presented, giving you easy access to watch and or share all current and past programs at your convenience. All right, I'm happy to introduce you to today's presenter, Will White. He's the Director of Technical Communications and the Training Custom Building Products. With over 35 years in the tile flooring industry and a former contractor business owner, Will is a member of many industry technical committees such as American National Standards Institute, ANSI, A108, ISO, TC 189 tag, Tile Council of North American Handbook for Ceramic Tile Installation, TCNA, the Terrazzo Tile and Marble Association of Canada, which is TTMAC, mentioned as TTMAC, the National Tile Contractors Association Technical Committee, NTCA, the Natural Stone Institute, NSI, the Ceramic Tile Distributors Association, Ceramic Tile Distributors Association, CTDA, the Education Committee for them, the Materials and Methods Standards Association, MMSA, the International Concrete Repair Institute, ICRI 310 Technical Committee, a member of FCICA, Flooring Contractor Association, and National Wood Flooring Association, NWFA. That's a handful, Will. Welcome. Thank you.
That's a mouthful, Jim. I appreciate that. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and begin. Thought we would have some fun with this and kind of create something entertaining and informative. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my webcam and we'll open it back up for questions later. All right. We created this Tiles Most Wanted in the idea that, you know, sometimes the tile contractors themselves are victim to what they don't know. So the real criminals here are the actual failure modes within the installation. So this first one we're going to look at is in the Arizona market space. It's in the Phoenix region. And this was a builder development of single-family homes. And the inspection started with a request reporting hollow tile concerns. So first of all, I would like to thank Mr. James Wolfel for sharing stories of his experience in the aftermath of these tile tragedies. Now, James is definitely a subject matter expert with tons of experience. He is currently the chair of the NTCA Technical Committee, and he's on both the Handbook Committee and the ANSI A108 Committee for Ceramic Tile Installation. He's also runs and manages Artcraft Granite, Marble, and Tile Company and has over 35 years of experience there. And he also is the principal of J.G. Wolfel and Associates. It's a tile and stone consulting firm, and these are his stories.
So you're talking about a brand new home built in 2020? Yes, brand new home. And 4 months after the tile installation, the new homeowner, their new dream house that they bought, they found that they had loose tiles, hollow tiles. Yeah, actually what scared them was is they heard the tile cracking and popping in the middle of the night. They thought they had an intruder. Or the house was coming, or the house was falling apart. So they, 1 and 2 in the morning, they heard popping and cracking. Yeah, that's crazy. They thought it was haunted, a brand new haunted house, huh? Yeah, it scared them because they didn't know what the heck was going on. It's 1 in the morning, so you turn the lights on, you don't really see anything, and then later, when they got up in the morning, when all the lights were on, they had some sunlight, they saw that the tile had actually tented a good 3 inches off the ground. Wow. Yeah. 3 inches. Mm-hmm. That's insane. Yeah. All right, so let's go through your inspection, kind of step by step, and go through your observations. I put these together from your report, so we can share them with everyone. So obviously, the observations that you had coming in, you found numerous tiles that sounded hollow just immediately after you arrived. Yes. So obviously the tiles that were tented were up in the air. So you knew that. So what I do is I drag a chain, and it's recognized the sound mechanism. I was dragging a chain, and I would say 80 to 90% of the house was hollow at that point in time. And so at that point in time, knowing that this area is tented and we have an issue, so we take those tiles out first to see what's going on. And then I randomly choose 3 or 4 more pieces around the house where it's hollow and pull those to see if I'm seeing the same thing I'm seeing under the tented tiles. Right. So you started with the first 2 tiles, right? Right. And this is kind of what you saw, right? So you found the mortar was not adhered well to the concrete. Correct. The mortar was not adhered. It came off really easily. The tile came off really easily. And actually, while we were removing those 2 pieces that were adjoining it were also coming loose as we were removing it as well. Yeah, and he had cut the ground. I'm saying he. I'm assuming it was a gentleman. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, when the mechanic actually started cutting the grout out tiles around this, the 2 tiles that I wanted pulled actually started to come loose. You can see that third tile that's loose over there in the right-hand corner. You can see that tile that wasn't one of the tiles we wanted to remove originally. It just started to come loose. So you take a few out and end up taking a few more and on it can go, yeah? Yeah, it was like a snowball effect, absolutely. And that's what I found on most of these 4 houses. That when we started pulling tiles around them started to come loose. And you could see the writing on the thin side. Some of that white stuff is actually drywall mud and dust. And then when you flip the tile over to look at the thin stuff that was adhered to the tile, you could see dust, you could see paint. Okay, so obviously the substrate wasn't cleaned properly. Right. Right. So let's hold the final conclusions. We're going to get to those in a minute. Right. Let's talk about the water test. Whose idea was this? Your idea? Was the installer aware of doing a water test? The installer was not aware of doing a water test. And so when the tile came out, when it was deconstructed the way it came out, the first thing that went into my head is the substrate was dirty, or it had a bond breaker on it. And so I dropped the water, and as you can see, we timed that. We were 2.5 minutes into that right there, where it still hadn't absorbed all the way. And then come to find out, into the second house, we learned that the home builder actually had, or the concrete contractor for the home builder actually had put a curing compound in the concrete when they were pouring it. Oh, so this was an admixture of a curing compound placed into the concrete. Correct. Wow. So, I mean, typically the most populars are the post-applied, right? Spray applied after the concrete's in place, and this contractor put it into the concrete mix. Now, I understand that is somewhat common practice in that area. That's the first I heard of it when we were at these houses, because I don't know why they needed a concrete curing compound in Phoenix. They're pouring concrete at 2 and 3 in the morning. And so I don't think it's setting up too fast, but I guess that's their standard operating procedure. now that I found that out after this. It was a shock to me when I found that out in the second house. But you combine out the curing compound with what I saw with the drywall dust, paint, and regular dust and dirt, and you're literally sticking to nothing at that point in time.
So liquid admixtures can help provide some great performance attributes for the concrete itself. And you can clearly see here, that's done at the batching plant, and it will greatly decrease permeability. Now, while that's a benefit for salts, for snow, etc., that also works against you for absorption. So now we have a slab that's been placed, whether it's been power troweled or not, we've got substantially reduced absorption. So the pore structure is tightly knit and closed off, kind of similar to a porcelain tile, if you will. So it makes bonding to it much more difficult. So it presents a challenge for the tile contractor in this scenario, who probably wasn't even aware of the fact that admixture had been added into the concrete mix. The most common method is the post-applied method that we mentioned earlier. This is done on commercial and residential projects. So the whole purpose of the curing compound is just to slow down that evaporation rate, to keep that water in the concrete, to help it hydrate, which will help reduce curling and cracking of that concrete slab. Now, I thought it was important to talk about, okay, why is it a problem for cement bonding mortars over a non-absorptive surface? So let's first look at the primary binder in a cement mortar, and that is going to be the obvious, the cement. So as the cement hydrates, it forms actual hooks or fingers that reach in and latch on to pore structure to form a mechanical type bond. Now, obviously, if you have an open pore structure, that's going to help promote that mechanical bonding. You know, this lends comment to this is why we only use non-modified mortars years ago with highly absorptive tiles that we typically had to pre-soak before we installed. And that's because they have a very open pore structure and are highly absorptive, so that promotes that mechanical bonding. Now, as tile technologies evolved, they became more difficult to bond to a closer knit pore structure. So we needed to incorporate a secondary means of bonding to these types of tiles. And that's where we began with liquid polymers, which evolved eventually into dry redispersible polymers, or in this case, a redispersible emulsion polymer. Now, these are added right into the bag, and as the water is mixed in with it, the obvious happens. It re-emulsifies and becomes integral to the mix with the cement. So now together, they form a unified bond. Now, these polymers will give you latitude in working times, give them more time to use it, working conditions, and are much more lenient in influences from temperatures on the job site. Also, the improved adhesion, the reduced water absorption, which is of high value in freeze-thaw climates, and then higher bond strengths, obviously, and some are incredible, up to 850 psi. And then shock and impact resistance. So we know that structures are always moving, vibrations, etc. So having these polymer modifications into your bonding mortar will provide much more resistance to those impacts and vibrations and create longevity in the tile installation. Now remember, we're looking for 70 years or more. That's our goal. So let's talk about tile bodies. There are classifications, you can see here on the screen, but if you just look at the two photos on the right, these are microscopic photos. I think they pretty much tell the story between a closed knit or low to no absorption rate versus a higher absorption rate. And again, those polymers working with that cement to form that integral bonding with that porcelain tile. You can see that microscopic photo there. So now we have two means of bonding, a mechanical and an adhesion. And if you look at this, it's pretty incredible. This was just done with a handheld microscope. onto an ordinary 12 by 24 porcelain tile. And as you look at that microscopic photo, it pretty much looks like glass. So porcelain tile is pretty much one stop short of being a glass. Now, when we talk about the concrete curing compounds, where can I find that in technical literature? Well, ANSI is the standard, and we can see here in ANSI A10801, the requirements clearly call out, do not use liquid curing compound or other coatings that may prevent bonding of the tile setting materials to the slab. There you have it. And this came out of James's report, which was spot on. The installer should have evaluated the substrate prior to the installation. So here is our first criminal on our wanted list from this particular project disaster.
Let's go back. I want to talk about the water test and just kind of make sure that everyone's aware of the fact that there is actually an official water test or an absorption evaluation of your substrate through ASTM 3191. And what that calls out for is just using a single droplet of water, similar to what you did during your inspection. And after 60 seconds or so, the water should absorb in. If it goes beyond that, then we all know, hey, it's non-porous, it's not absorptive, so we have something there, besides the drywall dust that we can see in the paint. All right, let's go back to your project. Now, you noted that there were some other conditions on this job that we have on the screen here. Want to talk about that?
Well, what I noted, like we talked about, is I was taking the thin set. Actually, the thin set was falling off the tile when I was pulling it up, and I picked it up, and I was able to really breaking really easily, almost like it was disintegrating at that point, where I could rub it and it would start to disintegrate. And I got a piece that I took a picture of, and I saw all the pinholes in the thin set. And you know, doing it this long and doing inspection and being a contractor for so long, you just know that there's something wrong with that thin set at that point in time. And like I said, and I called a couple of mortar manufacturers and asked them, "Did you see this many pinholes in your thin set?" I'm like, "No, it looks like it's either overwatering or mixing at too high a speed, or maybe even they recapped the thin set. You know, it got old, so they added more water to it and weakened the structure of it."
So the pinholes are a good indicator of a high-speed drill and or, retempering, which basically means to either add powder or typically water after the mortar has been mixed, slaked, and is in use. As it starts to harden in the bucket, let's add some more water so that we can save it. That's not necessary. All you really need to do is keep stirring that mortar to, keep that pot life going. But most certainly, these are manufacturer recommendations. So my next question is there somewhere else that this information is listed from a standards perspective? And the answer is absolutely. It is also in ANSI, which is the tile installation standard, specifically A108.05, which is all about setting of the ceramic tile with the modified dry set cement mortar. So mix in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Mix thoroughly with a low speed mixer. Don't overmix, and then never retemper. Don't add anything else after the slaking period. So here we have our second criminal, high-speed drill or retempering.
Okay, so let's move on to the next part of the inspection here. We're talking about, okay, I'll let you elaborate on this, James.
Well, per ANSI 108.5, the way we set tile with modified and unmodified mortars is that on your trowel marks are supposed to be perpendicular to the long side of the tile. And the reason being is so you can put that tile, you can trowel the mortar out and you can collapse those ridges by moving the tile back and forth. And as you can see here, it looks like they just kind of scooped it around, played with it. Maybe the substrate was out and they pick the tile back up and put some more thin set under it. And so the tile, the tile itself, you can see that there was really good bond with the tile. Okay, so that wasn't a problem. But at the same time, you can also see the unclapped trowel marks, and that becomes a problem at the edges and the corners, especially.
So combing the mortar in straight lines, is that all there is? And where can I find it? So the answer is no, that's not all there is. I think that if you looked at the photos closely, we'll recap later, but you can clearly see in some of the photos that they never used the flat side of the trowel to key that mortar in first. So that's the first order of business. So we should really never see the concrete when we remove a tile. And removing a tile should always come up in pieces, but key it in first, then use the proper notch trowel that's recommended by the mortar manufacturer based on the size and type of your tile, and then comb it in a single direction and always to the shortest side. So now we can clearly see, hey, it is in the industry standards. Are there any other resources available? And the answer is yes. Trowel and Error. I mean, this is a fantastic resource. And you can see that this is just a short video clip, but it's very informative, very simple to understand. And honestly, it's the best 6 minutes and 35 seconds that we can all spend to avoid these tile crimes. And you can clearly see it's got over 6.7 million views. And I think that Jim may want to add in on this.
Yeah, Will, thank you. I just wanted to mention to everyone in attendance that this trial and error video is in English, Russian, Spanish, and French Canadian, and it is available in all languages on the NTCA YouTube channel. Please take a moment to go watch it and share it with any and all people that should be watching it. Thanks, Will.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Absolutely. Couldn't reiterate that enough. Carry that flag high. It's 6 minutes and 35 seconds. It's worth every bit of that time to spend. So now we have our third criminal on this singular project. So I think we're now starting to see a trend. And the realization is that rarely tile failures or any type of failures are attributed to a singular cause. So now we have 3 on our list just for this particular project.
All right, let's go on to the next observation in your report. Your favorite?
Yeah, so this has been discussed many times in our meetings. Will, you've been in those meetings where we talk about coverage versus support, things like that. And so how many times have you seen a porcelain or ceramic tile in the field fail because of lack of mortar contact or lack of support? You really don't see that a lot. Okay, yep. So how I look at it,
all right, let's go on to the next observation in your report. Your favorite?
Yeah, so this has been discussed many times in our meetings. Will, you've been in those meetings where we talk about coverage versus support, things like that. And so how many times have you seen a porcelain or ceramic tile in the field fail because of lack of mortar contact or lack of support? You really don't see that a lot. Okay, yep. So how I look at it, in my opinion, or how I look at it, if you don't have the movement joints and your tile is sitting on top of that mortar, the first hint of that movement is going to shear that tile off the top of the mortar. Okay? And so that's what I was seeing as well. Like I said, there was 2 problems pretty much in each house where the thin set wasn't sticking to the floor of the substrate and the tile wasn't sticking to the thin set. And so when they started getting the movement at the perimeter, because believe it or not, in Arizona, we do get moisture, and it's wood base, and they're butting up the tile against the base and grouting it, literally where there's places that are 1/16 of an inch wide at the wood base. So the moment that base starts to expand, it starts to shear that tile off the top of the mortar. Well, I've seen people where the tile is cut to 1/16 of an inch of the baseboard. There's no movement at all, no room for movement at all. And of course, there's not sealant in there, it's hard to grout it. Okay?
Right.
And inevitably, when you pull that grout out, there's thin stuff that goes underneath there. So you don't have any area for movement at all. And so when that baseboard starts to expand and contract, or the house starts to move, the tile starts to shear off the thin set because it's only adhered to the top of the ridge.
Right.
So what I see is a lack of coverage or a lack of bonding is usually brought out by lack of movement or perimeter joints.
We see that every day, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't know about ANSI, we don't know about TCNA EJ171, we don't know about movement joints. We don't know about the troweling requirements. We're not paying attention to our trowel notches. So in the end, we end up with not just ruining one new homeowner's dream house, but we typically end up rolling through 20 or 30 on the project just as a single installer.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, these houses were virtually next door to each other. So what you look for at that point in time, when it, as a consultant, as an inspector, you start looking for patterns. Okay. And so what I see all the time is I see clusters of houses that have the same type of installation techniques, and usually the same types of problems.
Okay. James, I want to thank you for taking the time and joining us here on Tiles Most Wanted. We do appreciate it. And we look forward to having you back on and sharing more of your job site inspections out there. And please keep promoting the industry as we know you always do, and share the knowledge and the information as much as possible.
Well, I appreciate it very much, as long as it helps everybody stay out of trouble.
Absolutely. Same here, and avoid those sneaky killers like spot bonding and bad troweling techniques and those missing movement joints. We need to find those.
Yep, right.
Okay, TCNA EJ171, Tile Council of North America. The missing movement joints, too common, and you can see here James even called it out. Having a shortage on your mortar coverage, contact, porcelain tile is very durable, but when you don't have any accommodations for movement, we all know those structures are going to move. I think it just uncovers those deficiencies and definitely can be the leading contributor to those loose tiles. So perimeter joints and change of plane, the perimeter are the most common lacking, especially in, ordinary commercial work and especially in builder work. So, getting that education out, most of these tile contractors or installers aren't even aware of it. That's kind of a crime in and of itself. So here we can add yet another to our list. So the three that you need, if you get anything, you need to arm yourself to help fight off these tile criminals with these three simple resources: the TCNA handbook, the ANSI standard, and of course the NTCA reference manual. So the final report shows we have 4 contributors primarily to these crimes, these failures on this particular job, where I surmise most of that had to be removed and replaced. So, rushing to get those jobs done in the middle of mad production can definitely come back to bite you. And as a former contractor owner myself, I've experienced it firsthand. So share the word, help get that education out, and let's find those missing movement joints. Thanks for joining us on the Southwest Tile Killers. And remember, the reality is porcelain tile is very durable. Let's give it a chance to last that 70+ years. And let's try to kill this nomenclature of most tile failures are attributed to deficiencies in installation. And let's be able to use our scientific analysis for things other than forensic investigations. Thanks again for joining us on Tiles Most Wanted. Jim?
Will, thank you very much for that presentation. I do have to say we had a few people that were having a hard time hearing you. It was a little bit like you were in a tin can on some of the video stuff. But I want everyone to know you can go to our YouTube channel and watch it over and over to get the information you need. It is important information, and it was presented very well. So thank you very much. Got a couple things here, a couple questions that came in, Will. One of them is 300 RPMs okay for most bags recommended?
Yeah, 300 is good. You've got a range of 150 to 350. You really don't want to go over that. High-speed drills are definitely required or highly suggested for mixing self-leveling underlayments. You need that shear action, so that would be in your 600 up to 1100 range. But for grouts and mortars, you should be down in that 300 range, plus or minus 50 PSI or 50 RPMs, you're fine. And
to make this really simple for everyone, please read the directions on the back of the bag. It will give you all that information. It is very clear. It is all spelled out, and that will save you a lot of problems.
Certainly.
All right.
With today's technology, Jim, we've all got phones. I mean, you can definitely get the custom app or any other manufacturer's app and pop in and look at the technical data sheet within minutes of the products that you're using on the job.
Right, right. Manufacturer's recommendations supersede anything that we've just been talking about in ANSI or TCNA. Manufacturer's recommendations always supersede because they're the ones backing the product. So please read their instructions. We have one more question, and I don't even know if you should delve into this right now. This might come down the line, but they're asking about if DETRA is being installed first. What do you say about that?
Well, I
and wait a minute, real quickly. So DETRA is a name. It's an uncoupling membrane. There are many of them, not just DETRA. So that's just the name of one of them.
Yes. Well, we always defer to the manufacturer's instructions. That's the first order of business. But we know that uncoupling mats, it depends on the substrate you're installing over. But for our uncoupling mat, we always recommend polymer modified mortars under and over to set tile.
Please call your uncoupling mat company and talk to their technical people, and they will tell you how to do it per their recommendations. It's really important.
Absolutely. And I think that the most important thing for me anyways, and I strongly suggest this, is to make sure that whatever project you're doing, whatever products you're using, that you do as much as you can to single source your products so that you can maximize your warranty coverage from the manufacturer.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, well, I want to thank you. I want to thank all the attendees who struggled through hearing and getting the information on there, and it really was a good presentation. Take a peek at it on the NTCA YouTube channel. It'll be up by Friday. Please enjoy your weekend, and we will have our next webinar. You'll have an invite coming out for a February 9th webinar coming up next. Will, thank you. Everybody, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Have a good project.